Hey guys, and welcome to today's episode of Leanne Jane Moments. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my journey of discovery to PCOS, how I got diagnosed, and how I've been managing the symptoms of PCOS ever since diagnosis just over a year ago. So I only got diagnosed with PCOS officially back in August 2018. But there was a long backstory to that, which started when I was about 12 years old. I've never ever had proper periods. I've never had consistent periods. Literally, I could have a period today and not have another one for a year. That was my situation from 12 years old. I remember that my mum took me to the doctor and we spoke to the doctor about it. And he gave me some medication. The name of it fails me right now. I think it was a pill that he put me on at the time to make them more frequent and regular. And then I also remember that not too long after that, I started to get hair growing in different places on my face. And I was mortified, you know, a 12-year-old girl, and all of a sudden I've got random hair growing on my face. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't want to talk to my mum about it because back then, you know, you didn't really want to divulge certain things and you didn't want to have that conversation. And we didn't have that kind of relationship where I openly thought at that point in time that I could just say, oh, mum, look, this is happening to me, or, you know, or what is this, or I need help. So I remember vividly that when the hair started to grow, I automatically was like, I don't feel well. I can't go to school, I've got a stomachache, or I was making up every single excuse under the sun not to have to leave the house because all of a sudden this hair had become on my face and I didn't know what was happening. I was 12. And I remember that weekend I'd gone to the shop because I used to get pocket money. So that weekend I went to the shop, I think it was actually the chemist that I went to, and I found Nair, which is a hair removal cream. Now, it's the first time I've ever used it. I didn't know how to use it. All I know was that it said it was a hair removal cream and I had hair presenting itself in places that I didn't expect it to present itself. So that I was just going to use it. So I bought this cream that weekend. It would have been a Saturday. And I went home and I put it on my face. Not reading the instructions too clearly because all I remember is that I must have left it on too long. But I didn't know how long to leave it on for. I was 12. All I wanted to do was get rid of this thing that was inhibiting my face. I plastered it on my face. And the next thing that I remember was that I had burn scars. I literally had burnt my skin. I left it on too long. The hair had gone, but I now had scars because I'd burnt, light scars, not too heavy. I'd burnt my skin because I left this hair removal cream on for too long. From 12 years old. I used to take my dad's razors and I would just shave my face with them. And that wasn't an ideal scenario to be in. But as a 12-year-old, not knowing what to do, but also knowing that I shouldn't have hair growing on my face in the volume that it was protruding, I didn't know what else to do. And I think that was the first kind of time. I think that was, I was always a shy person. But this happening to me at this age, and it's visible to the outside eye, anybody can see this. That made me not want to leave the house. That made me feel really down within myself. That made me feel like I didn't want people to look at me. I didn't want people to see me. It was from that age that I was, you know, determined that I would do anything that was possible to make sure that this hair on my face was hidden, wasn't obvious. And at 12 years old, what do you do? How do you manage that? And I managed to go through life, you know, for probably about 2 to 3 years until one day my brother, he lived abroad and he came home just to visit. And obviously I'm in the house, so that's supposed to be my safety net. And he turned around and said, "You've got hair on your face. Why have you got hair on your face? You're not supposed to have hair on your face." And literally, I was just, I didn't have words. I remember I ran upstairs to my room and I cried and I cried and I cried. Because what am I supposed to do? What was I supposed to do? still not at the point where I can have this open conversation about it. And I spoke to my mum about it eventually, and we went to the doctors, and the doctor gave me another pill. He gave me yet another pill. And he said that this pill would stop the hair from growing. So now you're giving me a pill for my periods to come frequently, and now you're giving me a pill to stop the hair from growing. 14, you just do as you're told, don't you, really, and you just take the pills. But I realised that they weren't working because the hair wasn't stopping. It was coming and coming more rapidly. And I just think that at that point in time in my life, 12 to 14, I became more reserved and I became more of a recluse in terms of I didn't want to be around people. I didn't want anybody to see that I had an issue, or that something might not be too right with me, or I might not be normal, or loads of things go through your head when you see things like manifesting like this in your body. You know, especially when, you know, you had period issues, but you can't see that's on the inside. But now you've got facial hair growing, people can see this, how you need to conceal it, how do you conceal it? And that's when I also started buying and experimenting with makeup and, you know, things that could cover up the hair. I remember I even bought hair bleach, so you could bleach facial hairs, and all I did was burn my skin. You know, I really had gone through a period of trial and error to try and conceal this facial hair. And because I'd done so much and I tried so many different things, I even tried acid that they use for, you know, facial peels myself. I did that at home in my room, and I'd done so much over the years trying to get rid of this hair, stop it from growing, anything, that I damaged the skin on the sides of my faces, and I have dark patches there now because my skin was damaged. And now I'm on this journey to try and get rid of these dark patches that I have on my skin now that I've, you know, spent over 20 years creating. And I get frustrated sometimes because I'm like, why isn't this working? You know, you're using different astringents and different kind of facial cleansers to try and lighten the dark patches. And then you think to yourself, well, it took you decades to damage your skin like this. It's going to take a considerable amount of time to try and heal it. But yeah, they're my early memories of what I now know to be symptoms of polycystic ovarian syndrome. So the doctor gave me pills to try and fix my periods. He gave me pills to try and stop the hair. That's 2 sets of pills now they wanted me to take to try and fix these 2 issues that were being dealt with individually. Also, I'd suffered a lot from a little girl with anxiety. I've always been an anxious person, always anxious. I don't know where it came from and how it developed. I just remember that I was always an anxious person, to the point that I used to give myself ulcers because I worried so much. I worried about everything. I worried about things that didn't even matter. As a young child, I used to worry a lot. And again, that was another tablet to try and heal the ulcer that I developed from anxiety, fear, and worry. So we had anxiety, we had irregular periods with some abnormal bleeding, and we also had facial hair, also known as hirsutism, at a very young age. I hadn't even reached 15 yet, and I had those issues, and they were all being dealt with medically on an individual basis. You know, there wasn't any point or time where anyone turned around and said, you know what, this could actually be PCOS. Because as it was then, it is now, with the fact that people in the medical industry don't really know what PCOS is, the extent that it goes, and how it can really affect women. They know the individual symptoms and how they affect, but they don't know, or they don't think, you know, we can see traces of this, this, and this, and this. This could be it. And I'll talk about in later videos about, you know, the medical industry and how they only seem to recognize PCOS if you're trying to conceive. They don't seem to be too bothered about it. And I've even had doctors tell me that, you know, they're not too fussed about PCOS in patients if it's not, you know, stopping them from having children. But then I would challenge that and say, okay, they might not want to have children, but if they have PCOS, the symptoms that they have can lead to something else. In my previous video, I mentioned quite a few different symptoms that are, you know, subject to PCOS. And I kind of called out endometrial/ovarian cancer as the biggest thing, simply because if you don't have menstrual cycles, if you don't have a monthly period, the lining of your womb builds up. And if that builds up and it doesn't shed, that can turn into cancer. So when medical personnel are telling me or telling people that unless you're trying to conceive, I wouldn't be too worried about PCOS, there is a lot to be worried about. Because if you're leaving things there just to dwell and to fester, eventually they'll convert into something else. So I was 14 and I had all those issues. And then to add insult to injury, I then started to have headaches frequently. Sometimes I'd have them for 4 weeks straight, sometimes 2 weeks. And it came to the point where we understood them to be migraines. Because my dad used to suffer from migraines, it was then thought that it may have been a hereditary thing where it was passed down to me. And then again, I was treated for migraines, individual and in silo of my other symptoms. So now I was treated for periods, I was treated for facial hair, I was treated for anxiety and ulcers, and now I was going to be treated for headaches. All individual of themselves, not even knowing at that time that some of the medications had an impact on this disorder that I had, which hadn't been diagnosed at that point in time. I just remember growing up and going through life, and eventually I stopped taking the pills for the periods, and I stopped taking the pills for the facial hair because it wasn't working. And the doctor gave me some cream which is so expensive, which apparently inhibits facial hair. Again, didn't work. And then I stopped taking the medication for the headaches because they got less frequent. And I remember that at a certain age, I don't remember how old I was the very first time. I think I could have been about 15, 16. And from anxiety and the way I used to worry a lot, that turned into mild depression. I would just be in my room all the time as a 15, 16-year-old, and I wouldn't want to talk to anybody, and I wanted to be in my own space. So I kind of fostered that culture from a real young age. It's you in the world, baby. There isn't anybody else. It's just you, Leanne. You know, you got to do this by yourself. This is you against the world. And looking back now, I now know that, yeah, I had depression. I now know that a lot of the symptoms, all of the symptoms that I had were symptoms of PCOS. I wasn't an overweight baby, but I was chubby. And as I grew up, you know, people used to always say, oh, she'll grow out of it. You know, she's fine, she'll grow out of it. People used to always say that. And I always used to have that in the back of my head saying, you know what, I'm going to grow out of this. I'm going to grow out of it. Because everyone keeps saying, she'll grow out of it, it's fine, you know. She'll grow out of it. By the time she's a teenager, she'll be fine, she'll even out. And I never evened out. I remember I was 10 years old and we had to get weighed at school, you know, so those activities that they do in school sometimes. I don't remember why we were weighing each other in the classroom. But I remember I was 10 years old and I got on the scale in the classroom and I weighed 10 stone at 10 years old. When my classmates were all weighing like 6 stone and 5 something, I was weighing 10. I was 10 years old. And I weighed 10 stone. And I'll never forget that day simply because I was mortified. I was 10. But I knew I was different to everyone else because I was the heaviest in the classroom. And I went home that day and I cried. To this day I remember it. To this day I remember the circumstances. To this day I remember the environment. To this day I remember crying about it. Crying myself to sleep. I didn't talk about it to my parents. But I was so hurt. Nobody said anything. No one said a word. But I knew that something was wrong at 10. And all I kept remembering, was that people were like, she'll grow out of it, she'll be fine, and get into teenage years, and I wasn't growing out of it, and I wasn't fine. Became a teenager, periods were irregular, had abnormal bleeding, facial hair started to grow in abundance, headaches started. That was all of my teenage years. Dealing with all this stuff, anxiety, depression, wanting to be shut away from the world. I didn't want to see anybody, didn't want to go anywhere. I just wanted to be by myself. I kept wishing that I was an adult. I wanted to grow up so fast, simply because I didn't want to be a child anymore. I didn't want to go through all these issues. And I thought and believed with all of my might and all of my strength and all of my mind that if I grew up and was an adult, everything would be different. But how wrong was I? So guys, thanks again for tuning into my channel today. It's been such an emotional one for me. Actually quite glad that I didn't shed a tear at any point, but I felt it inside. If you want to be one of the first people to be notified when I upload new content to my channel, all you have to do is click on the subscribe button, the red one at the bottom of this video, and you'll get all of my updates when content's uploaded to the channel. All I ask is that you share this video, you like it, even drop comments on the video, drop your questions on the video. Let's start a conversation about PCOS and how we move forward as a collective. It's not about me alone, it's not about you alone, but it's about a support network to make sure that, people don't suffer the way that we have had to. People don't have to face the troubles and the struggles that we have had to in trying to understand our condition and understand how to manage it. Thanks again, and I will see you again soon. Take care.